Welcome to another episode of The Morning After. Episode 19. I'm your host, Jared Smith. It is the morning after the divisional round in the NFL. It is the morning of the Natty. The college football playoff will conclude tonight. Indiana and Miami. I will have a last-minute market reaction, or I guess I should say market update, as we get ready to play the national championship later tonight in Miami, home game for the Hurricanes. But let's start with, we've got a packed show, same vibe as always, right? We're going to go through all four NFL Divisional Round games. I'll give you my thoughts. We'll spin things forward to Championship Sunday. This will be a quicker pod than you're used to on Sundays. They've been getting shorter and shorter because we have fewer games to talk about. And the format will continue to change as we get further down the road, right? We only have 2 games next week and then one more game for the next 2 weeks after that. And then this format, this podcast will change a little bit. I don't know how it's going to change yet. Maybe I'll do more episodes during the week to accommodate some college basketball, to accommodate some other things. Maybe I'll start doing some interviews. I don't know. I haven't decided yet. We're not at the end of the regular season, or not at the end of the postseason yet in the NFL. So let's take it one step at a time. Let's get into what you all want to talk about, which is the NFL Divisional Round. Insane. We had 3 out of the 4 favorites cover. All 4 favorites won, but obviously the Bears cover and don't win in that wild game, which we just finished watching. I'm recording this, of course, on a Sunday night. Let's start with the Saturday games, Bills-Broncos, and what more can you say? Broncos win the game 33-30. They lost the box score, lost yards per play, lost success rate, but +4 turnover margin. I'm sorry, you just can't overcome turning the ball over 5 times in one football game, and a lot of them were on Josh Allen, especially that fumble at the end of the half, which was brutal. Now, to be fair, I thought they got an unfavorable whistle. I think the Brandon Cooks play was a 50-50 play. I'm shocked they didn't review it. I have no idea what a catch is anymore in the NFL. I have no idea if that was simultaneous possession or not, or what. Honestly, what rule says that you can just rip a ball away from an offensive player and it counts as an interception? To me, it looked like Cooks caught it, knee down, was going to the ground, and as he was going to the ground, the ball came loose, and that's when the defensive back ripped it away. But I was always under the impression that tie goes to the runner, right? We hear that in baseball a lot. Usually the offensive player gets the benefit of the doubt. Brandon Cooks did not get the benefit of the doubt in that scenario. You want to say that it was an interception? It's hard for me to argue with you because I don't know what a catch is anymore. But Brandon Cooks did not get the benefit of that doubt. The benefit of the doubt went to the defensive player in that scenario, and that's just against what we typically see with NFL referees. The offense usually has the advantage. And then the pass interference at the end of the game, in overtime, that really set up the game-winning field goal. That looked like a 50-50 play too. And frankly, if that's PI, then the Miami Ole Miss play, at the end of that game, that's PI too. So I think we've reached the point with pass interference and what is a catch. We're so far down the rabbit hole, I have no idea how to officiate either of those two things properly anymore. So I'm just guessing, and then I wait for social media discourse to kind of steer me in the right direction. It looks like social media was kind of split on the Brandon Cooks play. I saw some people when I tweeted it out that said it wasn't a catch and it was obvious that it was an interception. I don't buy that. And then a lot of people that said they thought it was a catch. So I think there's a lot of confusion out there about that play. And for Bills fans, I'm sorry. I think the fact that Bo Nix got hurt and isn't going to play in the conference championship game tells you that the wrong team is playing in the conference championship game. The Bills should have won that game. They just didn't. The turnovers is really what cost them. I mean, they won the box score. They just lost the turnover margin. Both teams, though, how about this? 18 for 31 on third downs. I mean, it was just a clinic of offense in that game. Really fun game. Fun way to kick off divisional weekend. The nightcap Saturday, complete belt to ass. Even though Darnold for the Seahawks was obviously limited in that game, I think he only threw like 19 passes. One of our better bets of the weekend was his under passing attempts prop. The Niners just had nothing left. Absolutely nothing left in the tank. 41-6 the final. Seattle dominates the box score. No surprise there. They also +3 turnover margin. I don't know how healthy Darnold will be next week. The Rams are going to be game. I mean, those teams have played twice. I think the combined margin was 3. I think Seattle, I think the Rams won by 2 in the first game, and then in the second game, the Seahawks won by a point, right? That was that crazy comeback where the Rams were up 2 scores late. That one should be an absolute war, and we'll get to the look-ahead line there coming up in a bit. Sunday afternoon, Texans, just again, C.J. Stroud just had absolutely nothing in that game. 5 turnovers for Houston. Not a very pretty box score. Success rate was even. New England was a slight win, yards per play, but 5 turnovers for C.J. Stroud. I mean, Drake May wasn't great either. They turned it over 3 times, and I didn't think the Patriots' offense really looked that good. You got to give credit to, of course, the Texans' defense. But C.J. Stroud, like Troy Aikman said it best, he has not progressed from his rookie year to now. And you want to say he was without Nico Collins, without Dalton Schultz, that's fine. But that doesn't make up for when you're under pressure, there's just no answer. And there's no ball security. And in the NFL, like, you've got to be able to hang on to the football even when you're under pressure and under duress. So C.J. Stroud and the Texans have a lot of soul-searching to do. They continue to be a divisional exit. I think they've made it to the divisional round all 3 years of C.J. Stroud's career, and all 3 years they've gotten bounced in that round. So nice to get a playoff win, but it seems like there's kind of a glass ceiling there for this Texans team with C.J. Stroud, and we'll see how they approach things in the offseason. Patriots, listen, I'm not going to fault you for winning in the playoffs, but that was not a sexy win by any stretch of the imagination. They had a pick 6, and they forced 5 turnovers, and a lot of them were because of the cold and the wind and the weather, and just C.J. Stroud being very sloppy with the football. They're fortunate that they get to play Denver next week on the road, and they'll be a road favorite without Bo Nix. But I'll be honest, I don't fully trust Drake May in this spot. I think the Broncos defense will be up for this challenge, and they know they're going to have to bring their A game with a backup quarterback under center. The game we just saw, absolute mayhem. Absolute mayhem. You know, I posted the picture of Tyreek Stevenson. Remember last year, the Hail Mary, when he had his back to the play and the Commanders scored that touchdown on the last play of the game? Jaden Daniels had that crazy Hail Mary. I honestly think the Bears have come a really long way from that point. So I give them a lot of credit. I give Ben Johnson a lot of credit. He has turned the tide of this culture in Chicago. But they let one slip away tonight. The Rams didn't play well. Terrible game plan. They were super pass heavy early, which made no sense. They were having way more success running it than throwing it, but they kept throwing it and throwing it and throwing it. And they put the ball on Stafford's arm, which I understand why, but when you're having success on the ground, Bears defense susceptible to the run. You've got 2 great backs. I think Corum only had like 6 carries in the whole game. I just didn't understand the game plan from the Rams. 42 passing attempts from Stafford, 31 rushing attempts, and one of them was a kneel down late. So really it was like 42-30. I mean, it was like almost a 70-30 split run to pass. Or pass to run, excuse me. And, Blake Corum had 6 carries in the game. I don't understand the game plan. However, they won the game. So hard for me to knock them completely, but they lost the box score pretty handily. Success rate, minus 9%, minus 0.7 net yards per play. Here's the difference. Turnovers. They were a +3 turnover margin. The interception by Caleb Williams in overtime obviously was huge. The Bears were very game. They were fantastic on 4th down. They were resilient. Basically everything they've shown all year. Caleb Williams, I think the future is bright. Ben Johnson's obviously turned a corner, but they let that one slip away. They absolutely let that one slip away, and I think there's going to be a lot of hunger in that Bears locker room in the offseason, considering how close they came to beating maybe the best team in football, the Los Angeles Rams, and getting to the conference championship game in Johnson's first year as head coach. But it will be a divisional rematch in the NFC. I projected last week we'd get 2 divisional rematches, right? Last week I gave you my predictions for the conference championship games. I said Bills, Patriots, Rams, Seahawks. I should have went 4 for 4, but 3 for 4 ain't bad. It'll be Patriots and Broncos, and then Rams at Seahawks. So let's get into the numbers. We do have numbers out for both games as we record this on Sunday night. Some adjustments, obviously, with Jarrett Stidham, right? I make Stidham 4 points less than Bo Nix. So I'm moving the line, let's call it 3.5, because he's at home, for Jarrett Stidham. So I make New England a 6.5 point road favorite. And now we're sitting at 5.5. I feel like that's a pretty good number that I made. I would obviously favor New England in this spot because you just don't know what you're going to get from Jarrett Stidham. But that being said, you don't know what you're going to get from Jarrett Stidham. He hasn't started a game, I think, in over a year. It's been a minute. Maybe he's learned something from Sean Payton. Maybe he's going to come out and not turn it over and not make the big mistake, and Denver's going to run it well, and Drake May is going to make the big mistake on the road in a hostile environment, and the Broncos are going to be able to skate by. That's the upside. That's the pro case. The bear case, right? That's the bull case. The bear case is Stidham has no semblance of control of the game at the line of scrimmage. And Josh McDaniels, Patriots offensive coordinator, comes out with a good game plan, puts the Patriots ahead of the 8 ball, puts Denver into a negative game script, and I just don't know if Jarrett Stidham can chase the game. We'll see. I'm not going to make a bet on this game right now because if I make a number 5.5 and it's 6.5, there's just not much value there, especially when you've got a backup quarterback scenario that you're trying to figure out. But it's obviously something to keep an eye on this week. The number could move violently because of this quarterback situation. We'll see. We'll see where the sharps come out. Usually that initial money moves the line, right? We saw a little bit of 5 go to 5.5. You'll see that initial money come in, but then it's like a lull, right? Especially we have a whole week to the game. You'll get that initial money come in, and then you won't likely see any movement until a few days later, more closer to maybe Friday, Saturday, when the limits expand. So if this thing's sitting 5.5 as I record this Sunday night, this line's been out for about 6 hours. Probably going to stay around that number until at least we get to midweek next week, and then we'll do a reassessment once they start to expand those limits come, let's say, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. The Rams-Seahawks, I make this number Seattle minus 3.5. It's 2.5, but it's starting to trend towards 3. So, again, that's a pretty good number I think I made there. I don't really have a strong – like I didn't – for example, I probably should have, and I didn't. You know what? I will. I didn't upgrade the Rams for their win because I thought they kind of pissed it away. And they lost the box score. So you know what? I'm not going to upgrade the Rams because they lost the box score and they probably should have lost the game. So I'm going to keep my number 3.5. If I upgraded the Rams a point for their win tonight, then I would have been at 2.5 also. So early value on Seattle, but you've got to take into account the Darnold injury, and you just don't know how bad his oblique really is, and how much he can practice this week, and how much of the game plan he can absorb. And I think that's why you might see this line favor. Like if we got to 3, I'm guessing that's where some Rams money would come in. So it looks like we're going to be kind of stuck on that key number between 2.5 and 3, and I think it's the right call because I make this game 3.5, but I'm probably a little bit heavier on Seattle than I should be because I'm not downgrading them at all for the Darnold injury. I am full Darnold with my number because I just don't usually do. Usually I make those adjustments manually. I have my number, your team full health, and I will manually adjust the team based off of where I feel they're at. But my full number with Darnold healthy is Seattle minus 3.5. And right now it's sitting 2.75. My guess is we probably get to 3 at some point, and then we'll probably stay at 3 for most of the week until we get some of that influential money that might come into the market later next week. That's it. We got 2 games on the docket. I think FanDuel might have dropped hypothetical Super Bowl lines. Let's see. There's a chance that they did. Yeah, I think they did actually. No, they did not. But your updated Super Bowl odds, I'll give you the FanDuel lines right now. BetMGM plus 150. Or excuse me, plus 150. BetMGM. Seattle Seahawks plus 150. New England Patriots plus 220. Rams plus 220. Broncos 13-1. That obviously makes sense because there's no Bo Nix. I probably would take the Rams here plus 220. Whoever wins in the NFC will be favored in the Super Bowl. So if the Rams go on the road and beat Seattle, they will be at least a 3-point favorite, probably more, against the Patriots. Like right now, I've got actually maybe not. Maybe not. Maybe the Rams will only be a 2-point favorite. Right now, I actually have the Rams and the Patriots with the same rating. Maybe I'm a little too high on New England. Maybe I'm a little too low on the Rams. Those are both fair pushbacks. But if it was Seattle, it'd be about a 2.5-point favorite. But if it's the Rams, maybe it's closer to a pick 'em. But I still think the Rams will be favored if they go on the road and beat Seattle because you've got to upgrade them significantly if they do that. I think the Rams plus 220. If I had to make a Super Bowl bet right now with the 4 teams remaining, I think you pick the winner in the NFC. And if you think it's going to be the Rams, then you got to take the Rams to win the Super Bowl at plus 220 because they're obviously going to be a favorite in the championship game. All right, let's quickly get to college football. Again, if you want a full breakdown of the game, I'm not going to spend 30 minutes doing this because A, I've already done it, and B, it's Sunday and I've been watching games all day and I need a break from the screens. So I think right now what we're seeing with the Indiana-Miami game is finally the market waking up and understanding that Indiana was probably overvalued after their win against Oregon. We saw some Miami money come into the market today. We went from 8.5 to 7.5. If you watch the show from Friday, you should have, hopefully, a first quarter under ticket 10 in your back pocket. Hopefully, a Carson Beck over 18.5 completions prop in your back pocket. And hopefully, Miami plus 8.5. I know I said we're going to wait. You can still wait. It might get back to 8.5. But right now, you've got to make sure you get in over the 7. That's the key, obviously. And we're in that asymmetric risk territory right now. We're at 8.5. I don't care where it moves. I don't care where the next move is from 8.5, because if I wait and bet 7.5, I'm still fine. But now that we've gone from 7.5 to 8.5, if we get more Miami money that comes in and it goes to 7 and you missed it, then you're screwed and you can't bet Miami. So if you haven't bet Miami yet, I am sitting on a plus 8.5 ticket. Once I saw the money start to come in on Miami today, I picked off an 8.5 at a slow-moving shop, and then I tweeted it out and posted it shortly after that. That's usually how I operate with this stuff. If I like a side and I'm starting to see it steam the other way, I'll try to get in as fast as possible and pick off a slow-moving shop. Usually you've got a few minutes. It was FanDuel, actually, that was slow to move. DraftKings also was slow to move. The money came in at Circa, at Westgate, moved that down to 7.5, and then it took a while. It took about 5-10 minutes actually it took a little longer from FanDuel. It took almost an hour for FanDuel to move off 8.5. But they did get there. Now the whole market's painted 7.5. I don't know where we move tomorrow. We get a weird late, sharp push sometimes. So it might go back to 8.5 tomorrow, right? The public is hot and heavy on Indiana. Everyone's betting Indiana. So maybe the public has their say tomorrow. It's very possible now that the NFL games are done and people aren't worried about the NFL anymore. Now the public money really starts to come in on the Hoosiers over the next 12 hours or so. And then once we get the kickoff, we're back to 8 or 8.5. If that's the case, then just wait, bet Miami plus 8.5. However, if you're worried about it moving to 7, it might, then I would just take the 7.5 now, because if it lands 8, then you just tip your cap to the bookmakers on a great number. Total-wise, it looks like we're kind of bouncing around between 47 and 48. I saw a little bit of money come in to push it up to 48 and then right back down to 47.5. I don't have an opinion on the under. My guess is we close 47. My favorite play is that first quarter under. I just don't see 2 touchdown drives in the first quarter. I think both teams want to shorten the game. I think both teams are going to rely on their defense. I think both teams are going to rely on their running game. Both teams will only utilize the explosive play when it's needed and not continuously spamming deep throws. I just don't see that being the game plan, especially after Indiana got a pick 6 on the last game. I think both teams in the first quarter are going to play it a little cagey. That the game was over before it started in the Peach Bowl. Once that pick 6 happens, that's it. You're chasing the game against the team that is loving it when you chase the game. And it's just not successful. So I think Miami, if I'm Miami, I want the ball first. If I'm Miami, I want the ball first. And maybe they like to defer. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I want the ball first. I want a long 8-minute drive. I want to take the air out of the clock, just like Notre Dame did last year against Ohio State. That was really the only chance they had in that game. Shorten that game, turn it into a tight game late, and then make those plays late. But the irony is, that's what Indiana wants to do. Indiana wants to shrink the game to a handful of moments and then win those handful of moments. So it'll be fascinating to see which philosophy plays out. I think this is Curt Cignetti's world. We're just living in it. Of course, if you've been listening to this podcast for the last few weeks, you should have an Indiana plus 130 ticket in your back pocket. That's a fantastic wager. That's one of the reasons why I like Miami plus the points, because I think there's a chance that Indiana wins a close one and we can middle that bet. But I also just think the line's overinflated. I just think Indiana is a team that is obviously capable of blowing anyone out, but coming off of the blowout, and Miami coming off of a game where, despite the fact that they really should have won by multiple scores, they had multiple dropped interceptions, they still covered. I still think Miami's getting slept on a little bit. And that offensive line, that defensive line is going to be up to the challenge. And I don't think Carson Beck's going to shy away from the moment. I love Indiana dropping into a deep zone and letting Beck dink and dunk and find that open spaces in the zone windows. And that's why I think that completions prop for Beck is going to be a factor. But I think this is going to be a bruising kind of game. And whoever kind of has the tougher mentality, I think, is going to win. So I think Miami is going to keep it close. I do think Indiana's the better team. So I do think they win the game. But in terms of a wager in the game, I think Indiana's a little bit overpriced. So I'll take Miami plus the points. We'll take the Carson Beck completions prop, and I think it's going to be a tighter first quarter. So we'll go under 10, not 9.5. Don't bet under 9.5. You'll want to get the push at 10. I still saw a couple of them out there as I was recording this on Sunday night. But if you waited, I mean, goodness gracious, I gave you that bet on Friday. So I don't know why you waited so long for that one. The other things that we want to talk about today, I'll be honest, it's kind of, I kind of need a breather. We did an episode Friday. We did another episode today. I'm going to do another episode likely next Friday, right, for Championship Sunday. So I want to keep these episodes a little bit shorter. I want them to be quick hitting, and I want to get to one more topic before we give you the actionable element for Monday night. We kind of already did that with the Miami game, but I'll give it to you one more time. Rise and Wine this week is a very close to home topic. There was a massive scandal that broke this week regarding college basketball and point shaving in college basketball. I won't get into all the details. The indictment's out there if you want to read it. A ton of schools were involved, smaller schools with names that you probably, unless you're a college basketball freak and you like betting, obscure mid-major schools, you probably never heard of half of these teams. That's okay. That's kind of why they got away with it for as long as they did. But eventually the bad guys got caught. The system worked properly. In total, 17 teams, 29 games were fixed. I think my first takeaway from that is the amount of games influence was likely significantly higher than just 17 teams in 29 games, right? If you are infiltrating 17 teams and you're only fixing or shaving points in 29 games, that's like 1.5 games per team. Like if you have access to teams like that, you're likely influencing more games. It's just it didn't work or they weren't caught for those games. So I think this thing runs a lot deeper than what the initial indictment said. I also don't think it's a coincidence that the investigation and the indictment was announced like 2 days after NCAA President Charlie Baker sent a letter to state regulators requesting the removal of prop bets in college sports. And I think what this is, I'm starting to see a stronger anti-gambling sentiment in the mainstream. You had the NBA betting scandals. All the NFL is rigged crap that I see every week with the refereeing. And now you get this college basketball scandal. I think this is giving a lot of ammunition to the anti-gambling lobby. And I think you are going to see a lot more pushback. So if you were hoping that states like California and Texas and Florida were going to all of a sudden pop up with these robust markets, like I think the legislation is going to be harder to push through because of this anti-gambling lobby that is giving fuel or getting fueled by these scandals, whether or not it's right or not. And I don't think it is. Like, I don't think scandals in college sports about gambling or, NBA betting scandals, I don't think regulated markets are to blame for that. But the bill has to stop somewhere. And right now, it's an easy target because you're seeing an ad for FanDuel and DraftKings every commercial break. So it's getting crammed down your throat. And I do also believe that lower level college athletes are still vulnerable to being taken advantage of because unlike the high major kids, they're not making as much money as the NIL deals at the bigger schools. So my suggestion is twofold. A, we need to put a limit on how much you can wager on prop bets at the college level. Period. End of story. Let's call it $1,000. If you're putting more than $1,000 on a college basketball prop bet or college football prop bet, probably deserve to get a couple eyebrows raised, especially if you're doing what these guys were doing and going around to different shops and betting 30, 40, 50 grand here, 50 grand there, 50 grand there on like NCA&T. Yeah, that should raise a lot of red flags. But prop bets specifically, if you're betting thousands of dollars on the unders on some obscure college basketball player's prop bet, it should raise some red flags. So I think we should cap the amount of money someone can wager on a college sports prop bet. And to me, that is a big deterrent because if you can only wager X amount of dollars, there's not enough money in the piggy bank for the criminals to want to rob it. And I think that is very important. The other thing I'm in favor of is restrictions to DTC. What's DTC? Direct to consumer sportsbooks advertisements. This is huge. I am in favor of restrictions for DTC, direct to consumer sportsbook advertisements. We are selling a drug here, people. The pharmaceutical companies, they've put a lot of disclaimers on their ads. They're forced to. We need to evaluate how the sports betting products are presented to wider audiences. The biggest complaint I hear from people is they are sick and tired of gambling being crammed down their throat at every commercial break. We need to do a better job at integrating this landscape. It might take a while, but this has been going on in Europe for generations. I think eventually this will normalize here, but we're in uncharted waters here now, people. And I think we need to sort through the regulatory framework of how to make it work here in the States. Because right now, there's a gambling ad every commercial break, and there are no restrictions on how much you can wager on unders for prop bets. I think those are two things that leave the market very vulnerable to anti-gambling lobby. And the less we're allowed to gamble, I believe that's a bad thing for America, right? We're allowed to drink. People abuse that. We're allowed to, smoke, weed in certain states, like here in Nevada. Obviously, cigarettes, pharmaceutical drugs. Everything can be abused. Everything is an addiction if not kept in moderation. Sports betting is no different. We just need to figure out how to regulate it properly, because right now it's the Wild West. And then don't even get me started on prediction markets, because they are starting to take over, and there is zero regulation in prediction markets. It is completely regulated by the federal government, and they have no idea what they're doing because they've never regulated gambling at the sports betting level before. It's just, again, uncharted territory, and I think it's going to take some time. We need to be patient. We need to be okay with some of these scandals, because if there wasn't regulated sports betting, we wouldn't catch the criminals, and they would just keep doing what they were doing without anyone finding out. So the fact that we're starting to find out about these scandals means that the system is working properly to detox the environment. We just need to give it time, and we need to continue to put smart regulatory frameworks in place to keep things moving smoothly and moving forward. That is my take on the college basketball point shaving scandal and how it relates to the current sports betting climate here in the States. But that's going to do it for this episode. I'll give you my morning glory. Again, I've given it to you multiple times on the show. It's the first quarter under 10, not 9.5, 10 for Miami and Indiana. It should be a fascinating college football championship game on Monday night. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you've enjoyed this relatively short episode of The Morning After. Don't forget, subscribe to the YouTube channel, subscribe to the newsletter, follow us on socials, click all the buttons. We've got a lot of fun content coming your way over the next few weeks as we wind down the NFL season and wind up our college basketball and push into March Madness, wind up baseball season. We'll have baseball futures. We'll have Yerfy Nerfy. We'll have NFL draft. It's all coming on the horizon as we get into the spring and summer months. But that is all for me. Again, I'm your host, Jared Smith. Thanks again for tuning in to this episode of The Morning After.